What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Truman H Fishing, and today we're going to be talking about frogs. So we're going to be talking about different types of frogs, how to fish them, when to fish them, where, some of the gear that I use, a couple of tips, and a couple of things like that. But anyway, let's get into it. So first, let's talk about types of frogs. So you have hollow body frogs. You have soft plastic frogs, and then you have hard bodies. So the hollow bodies, they come in walking, poppers, or you can find like a buzz kind of bait. And then you got the hard bodies, you have walkers and poppers as well. And then the soft plastics, you have strictly pretty much just buzz. So poppers, obviously have the popper in the front, so they got a little cup area. Walking, they typically have like a nose. And then with the buzz, such as this one, I believe this is a ribbit. I guess this one could technically be like it's a hybrid. It's a soft plastic, but it's also a hollow body. And the buzz is going to be like this. You're going to see little paddle tails almost, or paddles at the end of their legs there or whatever, and give you kind of like a buzz action. A lot of soft plastic frogs are put on the back of buzz baits and things like that. Just to give it a little more action, a little more something in the water. Where do you fish a frog? So first things first, frogs typically live around lily pads, grass, stuff like that. Something, somewhere shallow, close to the bank. Somewhere that makes sense for a frog. You can probably catch a fish if you threw a frog out in the middle of the lake every once in a blue moon. But that's typically not where you're gonna get the most of your blow-ups. So you need to look for a shallow spot with some grass, some lily pads, mats, something like that. Something where frogs are going to be at, and somewhere that they're going to, kind of reside, right? Maybe they go in for a little swim. I personally like to throw it where it makes the most sense to me. So if I find like some grass or some lily pads or something like that off of the bank or close to the bank, but where there's an actual bank, not just a grass patch. I typically try to throw the frog close to the bank because if you think about it, that's where most of the frogs are going to jump into the water from, right? And that's what you're kind of imitating. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the gear when you're fishing with a frog. So I personally like a heavier rod. Right now I've got a frog tied up to it's actually a flipping stick, which I typically want to do. But the reason I'm throwing a flipping rod right now is actually because I had a buzzbait tied onto my heavy rod. But the basics are there, the foundation is there in a flipping rod. You want a heavy rod. Action, probably a fast action, honestly, will be just fine. And the reason for that is you're fishing grass or these lily pads or whatever, and these bass will come up. Imagine this frog's in the water. You're popping it along, this bass is going to come up and grab it, and it's going to take it straight down, right? And so it's really easy to get hung up in some of the lily pads and some of the grass and stuff like that, and you need a nice rod with a nice backbone to be able to pull them out of that. Along with that, you're also going to need some nice line. I say some nice line, but some heavier line. So I typically throw with a mono because mono floats and topwater frogs also float. With mono, you're gonna get a little more stretch and stuff like that, and a little more abrasion. But I mean, in my experience, it's never really been a problem if I get a little thicker mono, heavier line, and throw it around. You can also use braid. I personally don't use a lot of braid, but if you want to use braid, you definitely can. And in this circumstance, it makes perfect sense, especially if you're fishing areas where maybe the grass is really, really thick, or the lily pads are really, really thick, or whatever the case is. And now let's go on to the reel. So I have a Lew's laser that we've talked about before. I actually switched this off of another rod and put it on this flipping stick this year. So I have a Lew's laser, and it's a 7.1 gear ratio. And I would say that's probably the minimum that you need to go with a reel. And the reason for that, you need to catch up to the fish a little bit. So this fish is going to come up and grab it, and he's going to pull it down. You need to catch up to it because what you inevitably are going to end up doing is when you set the hook, you're gonna have to wait a couple of seconds, but we'll get to more of that here in just a little bit. So now let's talk about how to work the different frogs. So with a popper frog, like the one I'm holding right here, you're gonna cast it out in the grass, lily pads, whatever the case is, and you're going to twitch the rod. So you'll twitch the rod and you'll get it to pop. You want that cup to fill up with water and splash, right? You want it to splash water, pop, whatever. Basically what that does is it splashes some water. It just creates a lot of movement, a lot of noise, and all that stuff, and the bass want to go after it because they think it's a frog because it's in the grass or lily pads or wherever you're fishing it, right? With a walking frog that I left it at the boat. You're gonna twitch the rod, and you're gonna reel in, and you're gonna make it walk. And one of these days, I'm gonna do an actual walking video where I show you guys how to walk. I'll probably do it on the water. It's best to see it and kind of explain it that way for me anyway. And basically you're gonna walk it like you would any other walking bait. And then with a buzz, you're gonna do pretty much a straight retrieve, right? Because you want all the action is gonna come out of these. You might give it a little rest here and there or whatever, but for the most part, you're gonna be trying to get these little legs to kick in the water. Important thing about the frogs though, especially with the walking and the popper, I can't say much for the buzz personally, but especially for the walking and the popper frogs, the hollow bodies, you want to really change up the cadence a little bit, add a little bit of rest. So maybe, if I was throwing this popper, and I'll throw a video over this, but when you throw a popper, you might want to twitch it a couple of times, let it rest for a second, twitch it a couple of times, let it rest, twitch it a few more times, rest, and all that stuff. And the rest are really to let the bass kind of help locate it a little bit and see where it's at. So obviously the noise and the movement is going to help the bass understand where it's at, but then the rest actually gives the bass a chance to go and hit it. Now don't get me wrong, bass will definitely hit it while you're still moving it. Personally, I like to throw in rest wherever it makes sense or wherever it feels right to give the bass a chance to hit it. Last thing we're going to talk about is the hook set. Now, if you watch my latest video, you've seen me make this mistake multiple times. And there's a reason for that. The reason is I haven't thrown a frog in such a long time, but I threw one again during my last video, and I was like, man, I forgot how much fun this was. When you get a bass to blow up on a frog, you want to give it a couple seconds, just a couple seconds. And I say a couple seconds because you let the bass take it for just a little bit. Maybe, I think I've counted it before, like 1, 2, and then on 3, you set the hook. And the reason you do that is because if the bass blows up on it but doesn't get it down into the water, into its mouth or whatever, you can still work that bait and that bass will come back and hit it. And I'll make sure that there's a video going on as I'm talking about this, because there's actually a couple examples in the last video that I did where I worked a bait, a fish blew up on it, missed it, and I kept working it, came back and hit it again. And so you want to make sure that that bass has got it down, and then you want to set the hook. And when you set the hook, you want to go back or up with the rod. That just increases your chances of actually hooking up with the fish, because if you look at this hollow body, these hooks are up top. Right? So if you swing your rod one way or the other, you're pulling it this way or that way. So you might be able to get a hook in its mouth, maybe, if the bass has got it real good. So let's just think about these hooks are up top like this, so if you're pulling straight up, you got a better chance of getting these hooks in there versus going left or right trying to sweep it, right? Because the body of the frog is built in such a way that this will collapse. If a bass bites this, the frog will collapse like this and let the hooks get exposed, right? So just a little tip, make sure you hook set back or up, don't sweep to the side. You'll increase your chances tenfold, really, if I'm being completely honest. But also, if you watch my last video, you can see it. Like it does happen. You can still hook up with a fish if you sweep instead of going up and down. But your chances of landing that fish if you go up are way better. But I talked briefly about if a fish blows up on it and misses it, keep working the bait because it'll come back. Also, something else to talk about is throw the bait, throw the frog in there in the same spot multiple times, especially if you miss it. If you throw it out there and you have a fish blow up and you set the hook and you miss it, throw right back in that spot. Because the last video I did is a great example of they'll still come back and hit it. If they think that there are frogs jumping around there, they will absolutely try to tear those things up. So anyway, if you haven't thrown a frog before, try it out. Let me know how it goes. Yeah, if you enjoy these videos, these how-tos, please like, subscribe, comment, whatever. What's your biggest fish on a frog? I know people can catch some freaking monsters on these things. Let me know down in the comments what your biggest off a frog is, and we'll catch you guys later.